Hi everyone, and welcome to our third episode of Science by OGA. Firstly, I just want to thank you for all the love and support that you've given us so far. Please continue to watch. I hope you enjoy. Give us any feedback, and we will obviously do our best to please the masses. Today's episode is a very special episode whereby we have a guest. Now, before I introduce the guest, a little bit about him. He is a very well-known scientist in his profession. His fields of speciality is physics, chemistry, and astrophysics. I know when I was a learner at Govender High, I attended his presentations at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and some of those experiments are still with me today. I hope the experiments that you watch today will spur you on in terms of your curiosity, if not pursuing a career in science. So without further ado, assisted by Mr. Dub and Mr. Jordan, I'm honored to introduce you to Professor Govender.
Okay, awesome event here, guys. So I'm really glad to be here with Mr. Dubber at Glenwood Boys High. We've got some really cool experiments today, and the word is cool. We have liquid nitrogen just simmering at minus 196 degrees Celsius. Yes, 196 with a big fat minus sign in front. It's probably the coolest substance that most people will encounter on this planet. So Mr. Dubber is going to be helping us with these. Remember, we're not playing with liquid nitrogen, we're actually experimenting with liquid nitrogen, all right? And we're observing all safety precautions and obviously the protocols. So the first question I'm going to ask Mr. Dubber, and that's the beauty of actually being a scientist. You know, you got an assistant, the assistant is on the front line. So the first question is, what would happen if we took a balloon which is inflated with the air from my lungs and dunked that into liquid nitrogen? So science is built on three pillars. You know, you make a guess, you do the experiment, and then you explain the observations. So let's have a go and let's see what actually happens. So there we go, Mr. Dubber, immersing the balloon at minus 196 degrees Celsius. Something amazing starts to happen right now. I see the balloon starts to get smaller. So you want to think about why the balloon's shrinking. Is the air escaping from the balloon? It cannot, because the balloon's tied up. All right, and you got to make sure that your hand's not submerged in the nitrogen as well, because you could leave some fingers behind.
That's super cool.
It is, yeah. So if you're gonna now lift that balloon off, let's have a look and see what happens. Yeah, there we go. And if you look really closely, there's a liquid inside that balloon. There was no liquid before. So it tells me that liquid basically has come from the air that has cooled down sufficiently and then formed those liquid particles. And as the liquid inside starts to boil, it converts to a vapor which pushes out, and the balloon seems to self-inflate. It almost seems magical, yep. But if there's any magic here, it's the magic of science, all right? So that's a really cool experiment, really interesting one. And I always get asked that question, is nitrogen flammable? What if we threw a flame into liquid nitrogen? Would we expect an explosion? And yeah, we do have a lighter, and again, it's always good to have an assistant. Put him on the front line, and basically let's observe what happens. And you see immediately when the flame makes contact with the nitrogen vapor, the flame goes off immediately, is extinguished, just like when it comes into contact with carbon dioxide. So we know that nitrogen does not support combustion, yes. And one of our favorite experiments, and that is a squash ball in liquid nitrogen. You know, when I started doing these shows about 20 years ago, this was one of my favorite experiments, and we got through a lot of squash balls without playing squash, and that was really cool. So we had a squash ball dunked in liquid nitrogen. It's been preparing there, and I'm going to get the intrepid Mr. Dubber to throw that really hard with a very good arm towards the wall, and let's observe what actually happens. The main trick here is to get the squash ball out of the liquid nitrogen. Yeah. All right, so the squash ball's been dunked there. It's been lying down into the nitrogen for about 1 or 2 minutes. Let's basically see what happens when that squash ball impacts on a wall from the good arm of Mr. Dubber.
for our final experiment of today, we're going to ask the question, what happens if we add two liquids together? Can we produce a gas? We've got some boiling water here in my hands, and in the container here, we've got some super cooled liquid nitrogen. Right, okay gents, here we go. Not quite sure what's going to happen, but I think there's going to be lots of action. Let's go. 3, 2, 1, go. And one more atomic bomb. Yeah.
So that's it for episode 3. We want to firstly thank Professor Govender for coming out to be our special guest. We hope that you enjoyed the eccentricness of his experiments, and also thanks to our very able and alive assistants, Mr. Jordan and Mr. Daba. Until next time, take care.
Never. Stay safe.